A Catholic priest was murdered in France this week. His throat slit while he was celebrating Mass. The perpetrators of the atrocity, two young men, at least one of whom had attempted to travel to Syria under a false identity in the past. ISIS has claimed these two terrorists were soldiers of the Islamic State. Take a look.
A second jihadist attack on French soil in 2 weeks, and this time it struck one of the nation's core values.
To attack a church, kill a priest, is to profane the Republic, which guarantees freedom of conscience. Faced with this threat, which has never been so great in France and Europe, the government shows total commitment to the fight against terrorism.
They took over from Father Jacques, who had just celebrated Mass, and they took over his place and started speaking Arabic. He was still wearing his robe, his chasuble. He was at the foot of the altar. They made him get on his knees and not move.
Joining me now is former United States diplomat Jim Jatras. Jim, thanks for being here.
Good seeing you, Liz.
All right, Jim, let me just ask this bluntly. Why France? What is it about France? Geography, political policy, the reaction to previous attacks. It just keeps coming in France. What is it?
I think it's because France is vulnerable. You simply have a very large population of people who provide a pool for the recruits to this kind of effort. And killing this Father Jacques most recently, one of them was a French-born man, and the other one was an Algerian migrant. There's just a lot of these people in France, and I think we're going to see more and more of it in Germany too, that the numbers of people that are coming into these countries that are simply not socially or morally the kind of people that belong in Europe, I think provide a recruiting ground for this, as well as funding and aiding terrorism in places like Syria, because we want to overthrow Assad or something like that.
Right, so it can point back then to political policy, to immigration policy, like you said, allowing these refugees or just immigrants who don't want to assimilate into French culture into France.
That's right, and the depressing thing about it is that it's even worse with the native-born second or third generation. This is not coming primarily, for example, from Algerians and Moroccans who were migrated to France in the 50s, 60s, and 70s in order to work. It's their French-born children that are much more likely to become radicalized. And by the way, this goes well beyond terrorism. Last week, there was a French woman and two little girls that was stabbed by a Moroccan because he thought they weren't dressed modestly enough on a beach. And, you know, that doesn't even count as terrorism, does it? It's just simply an expression of a moral and social attitude that is alien to the European cultures.
Well, Jim, what makes these second or third generation migrants, if you will, these children of immigrants, what makes them so vulnerable to this radicalization if they haven't even experienced it themselves in their home country?
Well, you know, some people say it's because of discrimination, lack of opportunity, et cetera, and frankly, I don't buy that because, for example, there are an awful lot of people in France from sub-Saharan Africa, black Africa, who are Christians, in some cases animists, and they presumably would be suffering the same discrimination, lack of opportunity, but there's no ready-made ideology for them to tap into. If you have somebody who's got personal problems or failures and is looking for some way to become a warrior, to become meaningful, this jihad ideology is something that says, yes, you can be somebody, you can amount to something, and it will attract some kind of people. And the hard part is, you don't necessarily know beforehand who they are. Like the fellow in Nice who ran over all those people with the truck, there was no indication that he was on anybody's radar screen, unlike these two guys who killed Father Jacques.
Right, and I'm glad you brought that up because one of these attackers was known to French anti-terror authorities. He wore a tracking anklet because he had previously tried to visit Syria and I believe one other country. They were watching him. Was this oversight on the part of the French authorities? Was this negligence, or was this just something that slipped through their fingers?
You know, you could say that's what it was, but the fact is they did know about him. They were tracking his movements. He had not yet committed a crime, so that they weren't going to prosecute him for something. So what else were they going to do? When he was given the tracking device, he said, oh, Islam's peaceful, I just want to say my prayers and all this other sort of thing. And then look what the man went and did. I don't know that there is a solution to it simply by using police methods. At some point, Europe's going to have to look seriously about who is letting these people in and maybe finding some way for them to leave.
All right, and we know that the French authorities, the French government, has declared a state of emergency, extended it rather, in France. But what does that mean, Jim? It's not stopping terror attacks. It's just in name only.
No, it does. It's more shutting the barn door after the horses left. The fact of the matter is, Liz, Francois Hollande, the president of France, Angela Merkel, the chancellor of Germany, for that matter, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, these are not the right human material. These are the kind of people who are more concerned about offending somebody's PC sensibilities, being accused of racism, even though Islamic radicalism is not a race of any sort, than they are about protecting the people of their own country.
Right, and the French Prime Minister himself said after Nice, I believe, he said that terror is the new normal. Jim, it can't be. Are they just accepting it?
You know, it is the new normal, Liz. It really is the new normal, and these people are clueless. We have a French government composed of multiple Inspector Clouseaus who are completely clueless about how to try to get rid of this, but they don't want to face the hard facts. There are people in France, in Germany, in Britain, and for that matter, increasingly in the United States, who should not have been admitted and frankly do not belong here. And until we admit that and look for how we deal with a problem that is within the Islamic community, and look, people are going to say, well, you're accusing all Muslims of being terrorists. No, but it is within that community, and we do not yet have a clue how to uproot it.
Right, and it's like you said before, it's very difficult to 100% or even close to 100% prevent or stop these kind of attacks if you don't cut them off from where they come. And that means literally cutting off these people from before they enter these countries, whether it's here in the United States or whether it's these European countries that are increasingly under attack. Jim, thanks so much for your insight on this topic. I really appreciate it. I'll talk to you again soon. All right, what do you think? Is terrorism going to be the new normal in France? Let us know what you think. Tweet Liz_Wheeler, and we'll be back in just a minute.